Tonight, we're exploring weird human glitches, the kind that slip past logic, past science, and quietly make you wonder how real your reality truly is. You lie still, eyes heavy, mind adrift in low light. The clock ticks somewhere off screen. Maybe you felt it before, that soft static in your brain, like a moment repeating itself, but only slightly wrong. A person walks by and something in you murmurs, "You've seen this exact moment before." But how could you? Your breath deepens. You're not chasing sleep, you're letting it find you. These aren't dramatic glitches, not at first. They're the tiny, almost imperceptible tears in the fabric of what should feel familiar. You walk into a room and forget why. A phrase escapes your lips before your mind quite forms it. A memory arrives, clear, vivid, and then fades like mist before you can touch it. This strange sensation has a name: déjà vu, and it doesn't mean your soul is time traveling. Or at least, not exactly. Neuroscientists believe déjà vu may come from a brief misfiring between short-term and long-term memory circuits. Essentially, your brain tags an incoming moment as familiar before it has time to fully process it. You're experiencing the present as if it were already the past. But here's the twist. People with temporal lobe epilepsy often experience déjà vu right before a seizure, as if their minds are warning them with a ripple in the timeline. Researchers can even stimulate parts of the brain with electrodes and cause the sensation on demand. So maybe it's not magic. Maybe it's just miswiring. And yet, why does it feel so personal? Why does it leave you with the lingering taste of memory, without the meal? You let that question hover, unhurried. As you breathe out, your thoughts glide to the twin of déjà vu, jamais vu. When something deeply familiar suddenly feels strange. You look at a common word, door, blue, friend, and for a second, it becomes unfamiliar. Foreign, hollow, like it doesn't belong in any language at all. This reversal is just as real, just as unsettling. It's as if the brain lets go of a thread it was meant to hold, and something slips. Some scientists call it semantic satiation. Repeat a word too many times and the meaning melts. But in everyday life, it can happen without any repetition, without any warning. You're writing a sentence, and one word begins to look like a symbol from a forgotten alphabet. You're saying a name you've spoken for years, and suddenly it doesn't sound like a name anymore. These moments pass. They always pass. But you're left blinking, wondering, was that real? Was I real during it? There's a quiet eeriness to these glitches. They don't crash your system. They just gently pull at the seams, like curious fingers testing the edge of a tapestry. You roll slightly in bed, your head sinking deeper into the pillow. The hum of the fan smooths the air. And now, something even stranger drifts through your awareness. Presque vu, the tip of the tongue phenomenon. You almost remember something. Feel it pressing at the back of your mind like a fogged window you can't quite clear. A name, a detail, a word you know you know. You lean forward mentally, reaching, but the more you chase it, the further it slips away. Some researchers think this may be your brain temporarily disconnecting two neural pathways, the one holding the memory and the one holding the label for it. Like knowing exactly what a violin is, but being unable to say the word. Others believe it's a kind of mental echo, your brain flagging the idea of the memory without having access to the contents. A notification with no message. And sometimes, that word never comes back. It vanishes into the soft static. In the quiet of night, these brain quirks feel less like trivia and more like poetry. You're not a machine. You're a messy, electric constellation of patterns, hormones, and ghostly signals. You're made to glitch. And in a way, those glitches are the most human thing about you. Because even when they unsettle you, they also awaken something. The awareness that your mind is more than thought. It's sensation, it's architecture, it's mystery. You blink slowly. Still with me? Let's go deeper. Consider this quietly haunting fact. Your brain, right now, is recreating this entire moment. The light, the room, the sounds, even your sense of being here. None of it is experienced directly. It's all constructed behind your eyes. So when a glitch appears, a word that looks wrong, a room that feels oddly familiar, a sense of being out of time, what you're really noticing is the software stutter. A tiny miscalculation in the vast simulation your brain performs every second. Researchers still debate if déjà vu is a sign of healthy memory checking or a system fault akin to a skipped heartbeat. They've never found one cause. And maybe that's because there isn't one. Maybe it's many. As you drift further into tonight's story, carry this strange comfort. Even your confusion has a purpose. Even the weirdness in your brain is part of the map. And sometimes, it's the errors that show us how the whole thing works. Your eyelids soften. The journey continues. You lie still. But your body doesn't quite agree. It happens quietly, almost every night. Just as your mind begins to sink into the slow warmth of sleep, your body betrays you with a sudden jolt, a sharp twitch in your leg, or a full-body spasm. For a moment, it feels like you're falling. And then, stillness again. This soft, startling moment is called a hypnic jerk. And you're not alone. Most people experience them, but few stop to wonder why. You don't fall asleep like a light switch turning off. You descend in stages. Light dozing, drowsy thinking. The lines between imagination and memory begin to blur. And right there, in that fragile threshold, something strange occurs. Your brain misinterprets the relaxing of your muscles as something dangerous. It thinks you're falling. A deep, ancient part of your brain, one that evolved long before pillows and beds and electric fans, flinches in response. It sends a surge down your spine. Muscles tighten, your foot kicks, your arm jumps. Sometimes it's strong enough to wake you up. And even though it's such a small thing, it carries with it the echo of something ancient, a kind of primal warning system. One theory says hypnic jerks are a leftover from when our ancestors slept high in trees. As your body relaxed too quickly, the brain would think, danger. You might be slipping, falling from a branch. And so it triggered a last-second reflex to protect you. Of course, now you're just lying in bed. Soft sheets, no branches, no heights. But the code is still there. Another theory links it to internal conflicts, the shift from wakefulness to sleep triggering a brief, momentary feedback loop. Like two systems, consciousness and unconsciousness, trying to pass the baton, but fumbling it just for a second. It's not always a glitch in the dangerous sense. It's a handoff, an overlap. But it feels weird, doesn't it? You're so still, so relaxed, and then snap, back into the body, back into awareness. Sometimes that twitch is accompanied by a dream fragment. You trip over a rock or miss a stair. You flinch at the sight of something falling toward you. The image is fast and fragmentary, like a half-formed sentence. You probably won't even remember it in the morning. And sometimes the jerk doesn't happen at all, but the sensation of falling does. Your stomach lifts, your balance slips, a phantom motion through space, even though you haven't moved at all. What's odd is that hypnic jerks often show up more often when you're stressed, anxious, or overtired. It's as if your brain, on edge from the day, is less trusting of the silence in your body, less willing to believe that stillness is safe, and so it pokes you, just to be sure. Not everyone finds these glitches unpleasant. Some find them strangely grounding. You're reminded, in that flicker of motion, that your body is still here, still tethered, still responsive. Even as you fall asleep, a part of you is watching the fall. It's a quiet irony, really. Sleep is supposed to be the safest place. But part of you never quite believes it. Even in this dim, quiet room, wrapped in warmth and hush, there is still one muscle, one neuron, ready to check, ready to jerk, ready to catch you from a fall that isn't happening. And here's the eerie part. Sometimes the jerks grow into something more, a condition called sleep myoclonus, where the twitches become frequent, almost rhythmic. For most people, it's harmless, just strange. But in others, it becomes disruptive. A kind of nightly electric storm. Doctors don't fully understand what causes this rhythm to appear. They can measure it, they can describe it, but its source, deep in the brainstem, remains elusive. And in rare cases, it ties to something more unsettling. A disorder called exploding head syndrome. Despite its terrifying name, it's not dangerous, but it is real. You're just drifting off. And then in your head, a sudden bang, like a gunshot, or an explosion, or a clap of thunder, deafening and instantaneous. But there's no sound in the room, just silence, and your heart racing. Exploding head syndrome is thought to come from a delay in shutting down parts of your brain responsible for auditory processing. Like the mind slamming a door it meant to gently close. Researchers still debate whether it's a seizure variant, a parasomnia, or a stress response. But they all agree, it's more common than we think, and vastly underreported. Imagine hearing a loud crash as you fall asleep, and never knowing there's a name for it. You sigh gently. No explosions tonight. Just quiet. Just your breath, and the low murmur of your thoughts softening. And now, one final image to hold as you sink deeper. A single neuron floating in your spinal cord, tuned like a hair trigger. It waits for the signal from mind or muscle that all is safe. But when it doesn't receive it, when the input is unclear or confused, it fires, just in case, not out of panic, but out of pattern. And so your foot jumps, your arm flexes, your body checks the ground beneath you and finds it solid. And the brain, reassured, lets go. Sleep doesn't come in a straight line. It comes in waves. Some are smooth, some jolt the shore, but they always pass. And soon, you'll stop noticing altogether. You're still lying there, motionless, but something flickers. An itch on a hand that isn't there, a tingle down a leg that never moved, a pressure against skin that no longer exists. Or perhaps, stranger still, a gentle brush from something you know never touched you at all. This is no ordinary sensation. It's a kind of haunting, not of the supernatural kind, but something far more intimate, the body remembering itself. This is the quiet world of phantom limbs. You don't need to have lost a limb to feel something phantom, but those who have, amputees especially, report an almost universal experience, a vivid, persistent sense that the missing part is still there, still clenched, still aching, still waiting to be used. The body is gone, but the brain doesn't know that yet. Inside your mind, there is a detailed map, a somatosensory representation of every finger, every toe, every inch of your skin. It's called the homunculus, and it lives in the sensory cortex, a tiny distorted body folded inside your skull, where lips are huge, arms are small, and fingertips carry far more weight than knees. When a limb is lost, the map doesn't simply delete it. It lingers, sometimes for years, sometimes forever. The brain continues to send signals to that space, and it expects something in return. But there's silence, and in that silence, the ghost rises. You might feel a phantom hand clenching so tightly that it hurts, or toes curling in on themselves, impossible to stretch. Some people even feel their missing limb trying to move, and swear it still does. This is more than memory. It's circuitry. And those circuits don't vanish easily. In fact, they can rewire in strange ways. There's a famous case of a man who lost his left arm, and later discovered that touching his left cheek made him feel the missing hand. Researchers discovered something remarkable. The neurons responsible for the lost arm had been taken over by neighboring areas. The map redrew itself, incompletely. The territory was reoccupied, and so, when you touched his face, the signals spilled into the ghost territory. Two realities, layered over one another. And sometimes, the ghosts aren't yours. There are people who feel touch on another person's body. If they see someone's hand being poked, they feel the pressure. If they watch a stranger get slapped, their own cheek stings. This is mirror touch synesthesia, and it's rare, but very real. The boundaries between you and them blur. Your brain can't quite tell which sensations belong where. One woman with the condition had to avoid hospitals. The sight of blood or a bandage could trigger physical pain. For her, the world was too porous, too leaky, too full of others. You might think of empathy as an emotional trait, but for some people, it's tactile. And that's what makes these glitches so quietly astonishing. They remind you that your body is not a fixed thing. It is interpreted constantly by your brain. And sometimes that interpretation is strange. There are people born without certain limbs who still report phantom sensations. How is that possible? If you've never had a hand, how can you miss one? Researchers believe that the map, the homunculus, is pre-installed. Even before birth, your brain begins building the shape of you. And sometimes it includes parts you never had. Ghosts of limbs that only existed in blueprint form. There's something deeply poetic about that. Your brain carries the memory of a body it wanted to build, even if it never did. And the sensations don't stop at limbs. People with mastectomies sometimes feel phantom breasts. Some who lose eyes feel phantom blinking. Even teeth, pulled long ago, may throb with ghost pain. Pain is perhaps the most persistent ghost of all. Phantom limb pain can be excruciating, not imagined, not psychological, but real pain, generated by real nerves, just not in the place you expect. Treatment is tricky. One famous approach is the mirror box, a device with a mirror placed between a person's intact limb and the side with the phantom. When they move their existing hand and see its reflection where the missing one used to be, the brain is fooled. It believes the phantom is moving, and for some, this reduces the pain, a simple illusion. but sometimes that's all the brain needs. Others have found relief through virtual reality, or even by simply imagining movement in the phantom limb. Imagination, in this context, is not wishful thinking. It's therapy. Still, no one fully understands why some phantom limbs fade and others persist. Why some people feel comforted by the sensations and others tormented. Why some ghost limbs are static and others seem to age with time. Does the body remember more than the brain wants it to? Or does the brain simply refuse to forget? There's a kind of reverence in these questions. You're not just a bag of skin and bones. You're a web of expectations, feedback loops, and mirrored spaces. Your self is stitched together, not always evenly. And even when the physical part of you is gone, the idea of it remains. So tonight, if you feel a flicker in your arm or a breeze across your skin that the air didn't cause, maybe it's just your brain checking the map. A brief, gentle scan of your internal world, a signal sent, a silence received, a ghost awakened. Let it drift. Let it pass. There's nothing wrong. Just something remembered. Some nights, your body feels weightless. Other nights, it feels like it doesn't fully belong to you. And then, there are the nights when the boundary between your body and someone else's begins to blur altogether. It might start small. You watch someone rub their arm, and faintly, you feel the rub too. You see someone flinch, and your own skin tightens in response. Not just empathy, not imagination, a real physical echo, a glitch in the boundaries of self. This rare, quiet phenomenon is called mirror touch synesthesia, a condition where your brain treats someone else's body as your own. You feel what you see. You absorb other people's sensations like water through cloth. It's hard to explain if you haven't felt it, but for those who live with it, the world is full of touches that aren't theirs. You walk down the street and see a stranger bump into a pole, and suddenly a pang shoots through your shoulder. You watch a friend scratch their head, and your scalp tingles. You observe someone being hugged, and warmth spreads across your own chest. It's automatic, involuntary, a reflex woven deep into perception. And like so many glitches, it starts with something normal. Your brain already mirrors others, even without your knowing. You yawn when someone else does. You wince at the sight of a paper cut. Mirror neurons nestled in your premotor cortex fire when you perform an action, and when you watch someone else perform it. But in mirror touch synesthesia, that system goes further. It doesn't just understand the action, it feels it. Researchers have scanned the brains of mirror touch synesthetes and found heightened activity not only in mirror neuron regions, but also in the somatosensory cortex, the part of your brain that handles your own bodily sensations. In other words, when you see someone being touched, your brain responds as if you were being touched. No filter, no distinction, no barrier, and the implications are quietly astonishing. How do you live in a world where every bruise, every tap on the shoulder, every hand on a railing becomes yours? One woman described watching a barber shave another man's face and feeling the razor glide across her cheek. Another avoided action movies entirely. The violence became physically unbearable. Even joy can become overwhelming. Watching people laugh, dance, hug, it's like you're inside them, feeling it all, at once. Some mirror touch synesthetes become caregivers, empaths, artists. Others become reclusive, drained, disoriented. Because while it sounds like a superpower, it can be a burden. The world was never meant to be this loud with feeling. And yet, it raises a quiet question. What if the boundary between you and the other is not as solid as you think? Even without synesthesia, studies show that your body image is flexible. You can be tricked into identifying with a rubber hand or a digital avatar. In one classic experiment, participants watched a fake hand being stroked in time with their real hidden hand, and within minutes, the fake hand began to feel like theirs. The brain, it turns out, doesn't strictly care about what's real. It cares about what's coherent, what's synchronized. Mirror touch may be the natural extension of that logic. If it looks like a sensation, feels timed like a sensation, and fits your inner model, then your brain lets it in. It mistakes them for you. And in that mistake, something beautiful and a little frightening unfolds. Of course, not all scientists agree on what's really happening. Some argue it's a heightened form of empathy, not a perceptual glitch. Others believe it's more about attention. Where your focus goes, sensation follows. But none deny its existence, and none can fully explain it. There's even evidence that some level of this mirroring exists in all of us. You've probably felt it before, just more faintly. A pinch in your stomach watching someone take a fall, goosebumps as a crowd breaks into applause, a subtle warmth in your hands when you see someone cup a mug of tea. Not pain, not emotion, just the sensation of being near a body that's feeling. And so tonight, as you lie still, your mind may begin to reflect like a mirror, not in thoughts, but in presence. You remember how someone held your hand last week, and now in the dark, the pressure returns. Not the memory of the feeling, but the feeling itself. You recall a hug, a gentle squeeze on your shoulder, a laugh that shook the air, and somewhere in your sensory map, those echoes ripple outward, like soft fingertips brushing water, because the body doesn't forget. Not entirely, not when the image was vivid, not when the moment mattered. There's something strangely comforting in this. The idea that parts of you are always in conversation with the world, that your skin is not just a barrier, but a receiver, a canvas where the self and the other meet, however briefly. Tonight, there is no boundary. Not really. Just sensation, just reflection. And the mirror, for now, feels warm. Time is steady, predictable, until it isn't. You've felt it, haven't you? A second stretches like taffy when you're in danger. A whole hour disappears when you're deeply focused. Sometimes a memory from childhood feels closer than yesterday's lunch. And then there are those surreal moments when the world seems to slow down. Your breath deepens, your surroundings sharpen, and time, so familiar, so linear, bends. It's not a movie trick, not just perception. Your brain actually processes more detail when adrenaline floods your system. In those moments, it's not that time is moving slower, it's that you're absorbing more of it. Scientists once tested this in a peculiar way. They dropped volunteers backward, in free fall, from a 150-foot tower. As they fell, they were asked to read numbers flashing too quickly for normal perception. The result? Despite their feeling that time had slowed, they couldn't see any faster than usual. But subjectively, those few seconds felt longer, deeper, etched. The conclusion? Your brain doesn't change your perception of the world's speed. It changes your memory of how fast it was. Time stretching, then, is a kind of recording error. Moments of intensity, fear, danger, novelty are encoded with more detail. And when you look back, those dense memories take longer to review, making them feel longer. You blink slowly. Let that settle. It's not just about fear either. It happens in wonder too. The first time you saw the ocean, the way a song stretched in the air when you were 16 and in love. That afternoon when the world slowed down just enough for you to notice the leaves moving. Time glitches aren't always dramatic. Sometimes they whisper. Consider this. There are people whose sense of time is so altered, it ceases to function properly. Some have disorders that cause chronostasis. The illusion that the first thing you see after a saccadic eye movement lasts longer than it really does. It's why the second hand of a clock sometimes seems to pause when you first look at it. Others live with Parkinson's disease, where time feels slippery. Minutes can seem like hours, or hours like seconds. Not because the clock has changed, but because dopamine, the neurotransmitter linked to movement and time perception, has faded. In some cases, patients with schizophrenia report time feeling broken, fragmented, looping. One man described feeling like his actions had already happened, yet hadn't occurred at all, a kind of temporal vertigo. And in extreme trauma, the brain can create time gaps, moments that are simply never stored. The clock kept ticking, but for you, those minutes never existed. It's unsettling, and strangely beautiful. Because in all these stories, the constant is this. Time is not absolute. At least, not in your mind. It bends, it fractures, it speeds, it drips. And yet we live by it. We set alarms, count birthdays, mourn anniversaries. We trust the clock, even when our brains quietly disagree. There's one experiment you might find fascinating. When people are placed in complete darkness, no windows, no sunlight, no external cues, their internal clocks drift. Some stay on a 24-hour rhythm. Others stretch to 25, 26, even 30 hours. One woman spent 130 days in an underground cave. When she emerged, she thought only 2 months had passed. Her mind had created its own calendar. Even without light, time happens. But it doesn't always align. You inhale. The fan hums. The room is quiet. Time, right now, is just the sound between your breaths. And maybe that's enough. There's a phenomenon called flow state, When you're so immersed in something that time disappears. Writers, artists, musicians, even athletes talk about it. You enter a tunnel, hours pass in what feels like minutes. You're not watching the clock because you are the moment. Some say this is when we're most alive. Others say it's when we're least aware of ourselves. Both may be true. And now, what about the opposite? What about those moments that freeze? An accident, a fall, a loud sound in the night. Suddenly, everything is crystal clear. The air moves like honey. Your thoughts sharpen. You remember every detail. The way someone's hand turned, the color of a falling leaf, the sound of your own breath. That's time dilation in action. The amygdala, your brain's fear center, kicks into overdrive. It tells the rest of your system, this is important. Record everything. And so you do, like filming in high frame rate. Later, those memories play back in slow motion. But sometimes they don't play back at all. Some traumatic moments are never stored. Others are stored too much, on repeat, endlessly vivid. And this too is a glitch, a painful one. The brain tries to help. Sometimes it overdoes it. And sometimes time becomes a spiral. There are stories of people who see events in slow motion just before car crashes, only to realize that their perception was accurate. They responded faster than they should have been able to. The brain, in crisis, stepped outside the rhythm. We don't know how it decides to do that, or why it can't always. Researchers still debate the mechanisms of time perception. Some believe the brain has multiple clocks, in the cortex, in the cerebellum, in the basal ganglia, and that each one ticks to its own beat. Sometimes they fall in sync. Sometimes they drift, and when they drift too far, you feel it. Tonight, though, you don't need to measure anything. Not seconds, not hours, not dreams. Time here is soft, elastic, unconcerned with deadlines. It stretches when you exhale, contracts when your thoughts pause, and vanishes when you close your eyes. So close them and let yourself float, not through minutes, but through moments. You're lying quietly now. The room around you has faded to a soft blur of shadows and hush, but inside your head, something stirs. A thought arises, clear, almost spoken, and for a moment, it doesn't sound like you. You didn't plan it. You didn't summon it. And yet, there it is, a whisper in your mind with a voice that feels unfamiliar, too sharp, too calm, too cruel, too kind. You're not alone in this, not even close. This glitch, where the brain produces internal speech that feels like it comes from someone else, is more common than most people admit. It's not necessarily illness, not delusion. It's the complex machinery of thought, sometimes misfiring. You think in language. That's not unusual. What's strange is how that language sometimes seems to separate from you, to become something with its own tone, its own rhythm, its own intent. Psychologists call it inner speech. And it's one of the most mysterious features of the human mind. Because it's not just narration, it's conversation. You ask yourself questions, you argue back, you rehearse what you'll say, you scold yourself, you comfort yourself, and sometimes you wonder who's talking. It turns out this is something the brain does even when it doesn't mean to. Your auditory cortex, the part of the brain that processes sound, becomes active even when you're only thinking words, not hearing them. It lights up faintly, as if a voice is speaking. Your own voice, or not. Some people experience this more vividly than others. They report inner monologues so distinct, so lifelike, that they feel like dialogues. And occasionally, the line between imagination and perception becomes thin. There's a condition called auditory verbal hallucination, hearing voices with no external source. We often associate it with disorders like schizophrenia, but it turns out healthy people can experience them too. A 2014 study found that around 5 to 15% of people have heard a voice that wasn't there, at least once. Some report it under stress, some while falling asleep, some while grieving, a soft voice calling their name, a sentence forming from nowhere, a presence. Not frightening, always, but uncanny. What's happening here? Some scientists believe it's a breakdown in source monitoring, the brain's ability to tell the difference between internally generated thoughts and external stimuli. In other words, your brain creates a thought, but forgets that it made it. It interprets it as incoming, rather than self-created, like tossing a ball in the air and being surprised when it hits you. And when the thought has enough auditory texture, tone, rhythm, volume, your brain tags it as something heard rather than imagined. It doesn't happen all the time, but when it does, it can feel deeply real. Still, researchers don't entirely agree. Some say these inner voices are the echoes of suppressed selves, parts of you that aren't normally allowed to speak. Others believe they come from the brain's predictive machinery, that your mind is constantly simulating voices, reactions, conversations. And occasionally, one of those simulations slips into consciousness. There are even studies suggesting that people who read a lot of fiction, especially dialogue-heavy stories, may be more likely to hear character voices in their minds. Not metaphorically, literally. You hear the character speak. You're not just reading them, you're listening to them. And maybe that's not a glitch. Maybe it's how we practice empathy, how we rehearse the world. Think about children and their imaginary friends. They don't just invent characters. They interact with them, hear them, respond to them. It's a natural developmental stage, one that mirrors adult behavior more than we admit. Because don't we all carry ghosts? Of people we've known, of arguments we never finished, of advice we never asked for but still hear anyway? You remember your mother's voice when you're tired, your teacher's tone when you hesitate, a friend's laugh arriving from nowhere. These are not memories. They're performances, staged by your brain. On a loop, invisibly. Even your own voice isn't always yours. Did you know that when you speak out loud, your brain suppresses the sound of your own voice? Just a little? It dampens your auditory cortex so your words don't feel intrusive, so you don't startle yourself. But when that suppression fails, your own voice can feel alien, sharp, loud, unfamiliar, like someone else spoke it through your mouth. Some people experience this more often during dissociation, or when tired, or after trauma. The self detaches, and even your inner monologue sounds like it's standing across the room. Tonight, you may notice these voices, not loudly, not threateningly, but faintly, like the edges of dreams, a sentence forming with no speaker, a phrase drifting through your mind, a thought you didn't think. Let it come, let it pass. It doesn't have to belong to anyone. It doesn't have to make sense. You don't have to follow it. These are just shadows in the hallways of thought, little slips in the machinery, the quiet, persistent echo of a brain always listening, and sometimes speaking back. The world is full of faces. You see them every day, in mirrors, in crowds, on screens, in dreams. And without thinking, your brain performs a miracle. It recognizes them. But every so often, that miracle flickers. You look at someone you've known your whole life, and they suddenly feel like a stranger. Or worse, you look in the mirror, and the face looking back doesn't quite feel like yours. This is a quiet glitch, one of identity, and it's more common than most expect. It starts with a condition called face blindness, or prosopagnosia. Despite the name, it has nothing to do with your eyes. Your vision is fine. You can see shapes, features, expressions. But your brain can't tag them. You lose the thread that connects a face to a name, to memory, to meaning. Some people are born this way, congenital prosopagnosia, and spend their lives navigating social spaces without the visual shorthand most people rely on. They recognize people by voice, hairstyle, movement, or context. Others acquire it suddenly, after stroke, trauma, or neurological disease. And what's most haunting is that even your own face may begin to slip away. Imagine waking up, looking in the mirror, and seeing a face you know belongs to you, but doesn't feel like it does. It's not frightening in the traditional sense. It's not monstrous or strange. It's just unfamiliar, as if you've borrowed someone else's reflection. There's a deeper, darker variation of this called Capgras delusion. In this condition, the brain recognizes a face perfectly, knows every detail, but fails to connect it to the emotional circuits that normally spark recognition. The result? You believe your loved one has been replaced by an imposter, a double, a lookalike. They look identical, but something feels subtly, disturbingly off. It's not a belief that arises from logic. It's felt in the absence of feeling. Because normally, when you see a familiar face, your brain lights up in the amygdala, the center of emotional tagging. With Capgras, that connection is broken, and so the face becomes hollow, no warmth, no spark, just an uncanny stillness. Researchers still don't fully understand the condition, but it shows us something profound. Recognition isn't just visual, it's emotional. You don't just know a face, you feel it. And when that feeling disappears, so does the reality behind it. There are quieter forms of this too. Have you ever looked at a word for too long and suddenly it feels foreign? Like the letters are wrong? The the spacing is off. There's a name for that: semantic satiation. Your brain stops responding to repeated input. Now imagine that, but with your own reflection. This is sometimes called jamais vu, the opposite of déjà vu. It's the eerie sensation that something familiar has become unfamiliar. And when it happens with faces, especially your own, it can feel like a curtain slipping. One woman described brushing her teeth, glancing up, and feeling like someone else was staring back. Not frightening, but detached, like observing a person in a movie. It passed, of course. These things usually do, but the echo remained. Because you don't often question what makes a face yours. Is it the shape, the symmetry, the expression? Or is it the memory of seeing that face again and again, paired with your thoughts? And what happens when that memory fades? There are even rare cases where mirrors themselves trigger dissociation, not because they're broken, but because they reflect too clearly. You see yourself from the outside, and for a brief moment your mind steps away from the image, as if you're looking at a character, not a person, not you. This sensation, called depersonalization, can happen during stress, trauma, or fatigue. You might feel like you're watching yourself live, like a puppet, like an actor, and the face becomes a mask, strangely animated, emotionally hollow. It's not madness, it's a brain under strain, temporarily untethered from the self it's used to. But it always returns. The spark rekindles, the mask softens, and the face becomes familiar again. Even in sleep, faces haunt us. You've dreamed of faces, haven't you? Some you know, some you don't. But did you know the brain may not be able to invent new faces? It only uses fragments, pieces. A cheekbone from someone you passed on the subway, a pair of eyes from a stranger on TV, a smirk from a memory you thought was gone. Even the faces in your dreams come from your world, filtered, reshaped, recombined. Which raises a curious thought. If a face can feel unfamiliar in waking life, can it feel more familiar in sleep? A dream version of your mother, of a childhood friend, of yourself. Sometimes you feel closer to these faces than their waking versions, not because they're accurate, but because they're woven from emotion, from longing, from memory's blur. So tonight, if your mind conjures a face that feels wrong, whether in waking haze or drifting dream, don't worry, it's not a threat, it's not a malfunction, it's your brain tuning the signal, checking the edges, refining the sense of you in the world. The face will return. Yours, theirs, all of them. And with it, that quiet anchoring recognition. You're still here. You rest your hands on your chest. Still. Quiet. But deep inside, something stirs. A subtle twitch. A finger curls. And for just a moment, it doesn't feel like you made it happen. You didn't decide to move, but your hand moved anyway. Most of the time, your body acts on your will. You raise a glass. You turn a page. You gesture as you speak, barely thinking about it. It's so seamless, so automatic, that it's easy to forget what a miracle it is. And yet, sometimes, something strange breaks through that illusion. Your body acts, and you feel like a passenger. This is the quiet world of alien hand syndrome. It's rare, but very real. A person may find their hand, usually the left, moving on its own, grabbing objects, undoing buttons just after the other hand does them up, even slapping their own face. And the strangest part, they don't feel like they're the one doing it. It's not a seizure, not a spasm. It's deliberate movement, without a sense of agency. The hand has a mind of its own. This bizarre condition often follows brain surgery or trauma, especially involving the corpus callosum, the thick bundle of nerves that connects the two hemispheres of your brain. When that bridge is damaged or cut, as it sometimes is to treat epilepsy, the left and right sides of the brain become isolated. They still function, but they stop communicating properly. One hemisphere knows what you want. The other doesn't. And sometimes the unconnected half decides to act on its own. One woman described waking up to find her left hand choking her. Another told doctors that her rogue hand often stole food from her plate, even as her right hand pushed it away. It sounds like something out of fiction, but it's well documented, and what it reveals is deeply unsettling. That agency isn't a singular thing. Your sense of control is not always accurate. You think you're the one making the choices, but sometimes your body makes them before you're even aware. We now know that many movements begin before we consciously decide to move. In famous experiments, neuroscientist Benjamin Libet showed that brain activity linked to movement occurs hundreds of milliseconds before participants reported making a decision. In other words, your brain prepares to act before you feel like you chose to act. Free will, it seems, may arrive late to the party. You reflect on that, the gentle unsettling of it. How often are your actions actually under your control? You walk across the room and only later realize why. You scratch an itch and don't remember choosing to. You reach for a snack and pause midair, wondering who decided that. These are tiny moments, but they suggest a truth. Your conscious mind narrates what has already begun. Even language can feel like this. Have you ever said something and only realized it was true as you heard yourself say it? The words emerged from your mouth, but the decision to say them felt invisible, like discovering a thought only as it becomes sound. This is not a flaw. It's how your brain works. Layers of intention, some conscious, some hidden. And sometimes, those layers fight. There are milder versions of alien hand syndrome that happen to almost everyone. You reach to open a door, but your hand grabs the wrong handle. You tie your shoe without thinking, then can't remember how you did it. You write something quickly and can't recognize your own handwriting. The body acts with intelligence you don't always feel, and sometimes it acts in ways that feel separate. Another strange phenomenon is ideomotor movement, tiny unconscious motions driven by suggestion. This is the mechanism behind dowsing rods, Ouija boards. People swear the planchette is moving on its own, but studies show it's their own muscles making tiny adjustments. They aren't faking. They genuinely believe the movement is external. The body can act, while the mind insists it hasn't. This illusion of non-agency tells us something crucial, that what we feel as control is fragile, shaped by expectation, by timing, by trust. And in rare cases when those systems fall apart, the body becomes strange again, unfamiliar, even adversarial. There's a man in the medical literature who had to sit on his own hand to prevent it from acting against him. He didn't hate it. He just didn't understand it anymore. And yet, that hand was his. Always had been. What changed was the story his brain told about it. Tonight, as your hands rest still, consider this. You are not a single smooth self. You are a chorus, a negotiation. Millions of tiny decisions, sensations, responses, all folded into a single I. Sometimes that I is loud. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes your body speaks first, and your thoughts catch up after. It's not a glitch, it's a reminder that control is something we rehearse, not something we're guaranteed. So let your hands lie soft. Let them twitch if they need to. Let them dream their small, ancient dreams. They are part of you, even when they forget for a moment. You blink slowly in the dim light. A shadow shifts in the corner. Just your coat on the chair, probably. But for a second, maybe less, it looked like a person. Still, watching, silent. Your breath stays calm. You don't panic, because this has happened before. You've seen things that weren't really there, and so has almost everyone. These are not hallucinations in the clinical sense. They're perceptual errors. Soft glitches in the way your brain filters what's real. And tonight, we drift into their quiet world. One of the most common forms is the peripheral flicker, a movement at the edge of your vision. You turn, and nothing's there. Not a figure, not a shape, just air. It's easy to explain. Your peripheral vision is optimized for detecting motion, not detail. It's a survival tool, evolved for noticing threats, but it's imprecise. It triggers even when there's no danger. Your brain sees a flash of shadow and fills in the rest. That's the key. Your mind isn't just recording, it's interpreting. At every moment, your brain is stitching together a guess, taking scraps of light, shape, memory, and expectation, and building a world. And sometimes, the guess is wrong. One eerie variant of this is called a presence hallucination, the sense that someone or something is standing just behind you. You don't see it, you don't hear it, but you feel it. This has been reported by people in extreme isolation, sensory deprivation, or high-stress situations. Astronauts, mountain climbers, sailors, they speak of a felt presence, an invisible companion just over the shoulder. Not threatening, not helpful, just there. Some interpret it spiritually, others neurologically. In lab conditions, scientists have actually recreated the sensation by using robots to apply mismatched touches on a person's back while they make matching motions with their hand. They create a feedback loop that scrambles the brain's sense of self-location. The result? People report the feeling that someone is standing behind them, mimicking their movements. Perfectly. Unsettlingly. It suggests something profound, that your sense of you is fragile. A position. A prediction. If the map gets blurred, the brain might invent another version of you to make sense of the space. Sometimes that other version feels external, separate, shadowed. And sometimes it speaks. Many people report hearing their name whispered just as they fall asleep. No one's there, no sound recorded, but the whisper feels real. This is a hypnagogic hallucination, a trick of the brain as it transitions between waking and sleep. Your sensory systems begin to shift, filters loosen, and things slip through. It's not dangerous. It's not a sign of illness. It's the brain testing reality's edges. You may also see brief flashes, faces, figures, lights. They come and go like sparks, often forgotten within seconds, but sometimes they linger. One of the most curious forms of benign hallucination is called Charles Bonnet syndrome. It affects people with vision loss. Their eyes no longer send full signals, so the brain, in response, begins to generate imagery. People see patterns, animals, even people, vivid, colorful, detailed, and they know these visions aren't real, but they still see them. One man described seeing phantom books lining his walls. Another saw dancers in his kitchen. Another, a parade of silent birds. The brain wants input, and when it doesn't receive enough, it gets creative. This isn't madness, it's art. The mind creating texture where there is none. You've likely experienced a much milder form, pareidolia. That moment when you see a face in the folds of a curtain, a dog in a cloud, a person standing in the fog, until you blink and it's just a mailbox. Your brain is a pattern detector, and it loves faces more than anything. Even a few circles and a line can trigger the sense of someone. We're wired that way, to err on the side of seeing presence, not absence. It was once a survival trait. Now it's a nightly visitor. So if you see a shadow that looks like it moved, or a shimmer at the corner of your vision, or a moment when your reflection looks back a little too slowly, it's not a ghost. Not exactly. It's your brain trying to understand the dark, trying to keep you safe, trying to fill in what little it has. And sometimes that filling in looks like someone else. This is especially common in the hours before sleep, when your attention is soft, when light is low, when the filters in your mind loosen and imagination begins to bleed into vision. You see a shape, and your memory assigns it meaning. You glimpse a flicker, and your nerves whisper caution. None of it is dangerous, but all of it is real in the sense that you experienced it. Even now, lying still, your mind may send you images of a room you used to know, of a hallway from childhood, of someone standing quietly at the edge of your memory. Let them pass. They are not warnings. They are echoes, flickers, signals searching for shape. You don't need to follow them. Just notice them, and let the shadow return to stillness. The world is quiet now, even the imagined parts. Close your eyes. Picture your childhood bedroom, the window, the light, the way your sheets felt in summer. You can almost see it, but then you pause. Wait, were the curtains blue or green? You remember, but not fully. The scene is vivid until it isn't. And suddenly you're unsure if this is a memory or just a memory of remembering. This is where we begin. Your memories feel like snapshots, but they're not. They're reconstructions. Each time you recall something, you're not playing a file, you're rewriting it, filling in gaps, updating emotions, smoothing the edges. And sometimes you add things that never happened. Psychologists call them false memories. But that phrase barely captures how real they feel, how convincing, how lived in. You're not lying to yourself. You're not imagining on purpose. Your brain is simply doing what it does best, making sense of fragmented data. And occasionally, it gets creative. Take the Mandela effect. A group of people vividly remembers Nelson Mandela dying in prison in the 1980s, even though he didn't. Others swear the Monopoly Man had a monocle, or that the Berenstain Bears were once spelled Berenstein. None of these things are true, but thousands remember them. With detail, with emotion. What's happening here? It may be a quirk of how memories are grouped and inferred. You associate certain ideas, wealthy characters and monocles, common name spellings and childhood stories. And when the facts don't match, your brain fills in what feels most likely. Not maliciously, not foolishly, just efficiently. Memory is not a vault, it's a painter, and painters take liberties. In one classic experiment, researchers showed participants a photo of a car crash. Later, they asked, how fast were the cars going when they smashed into each other? Others were asked the same question, but with the word hit instead. The result? Those who heard smashed remembered the crash as more severe, even imagined broken glass that wasn't there. A single word changed the memory. That's all it takes. And now, imagine what decades of retelling do. The more you revisit a memory, the more you sculpt it. You emphasize what felt important. You edit what didn't. And if someone else shares a different version, sometimes yours shifts toward theirs, without you realizing it. This is called memory conformity. And it can happen to anyone. You sit with siblings, recall a family vacation, and leave the conversation remembering it differently than you did before. Not because you've been convinced, but because your brain wants cohesion, shared narrative, harmony. You adopt the group's memory. It feels safer that way. But sometimes the edits go deeper. There are people who remember entire events that never happened. They remember being lost in a mall as a child, meeting Bugs Bunny at Disneyland, even committing crimes they didn't commit. And it's not that they're delusional. Their brains simply constructed a convincing internal movie, often shaped by suggestion, authority, or emotional need. You may think, that would never happen to me. But it might already have. There are likely memories in your mind that contain strangers, people who never existed, or moments that happened to someone else but now feel like yours. There's even a condition called cryptomnesia, when you remember something but forget where you got it. A quote you thought you made up, a story you swear happened to you. In truth, it was borrowed from a book, a film, a conversation years ago. But once it's inside your mind, it's yours. That's the unsettling grace of memory. It absorbs, it reworks, it believes itself, and yet sometimes it knows. Have you ever recalled a face in a dream that didn't feel like your own memory? A place you've never been, but can describe in perfect detail? Some people believe these are fragments, lost pieces resurfacing, a brief access to deeper files, or maybe echoes from someone else. The truth is, we don't fully understand how memory is stored, or why certain ones return uninvited, or how others vanish completely. You remember your first pet's name, but not what you had for breakfast 3 days ago. You recall a stranger's face from a train 5 years ago, but not your best friend's birthday. Your brain sorts by emotion, not just importance, by pattern, not just logic. So tonight, when a random memory arises, something odd, unconnected, don't push it away. Let it float. It may be real or a reconstruction, or something between. And that's okay, because your memories, like your dreams, are not meant to be perfect records. They're stories, internal myths, reflections of how you've moved through the world. Sometimes they glitch, sometimes they lie, sometimes they protect, and sometimes they whisper truths you forgot you knew. So lie still. Let the stranger in your memory sit beside you. Offer them silence and sleep. Your eyes are closed now, but the world behind them is still vivid. Soft shapes, quiet breath. You know where you are. Yet a part of you has started to float. You might feel light or distant, or maybe just not quite yourself. This is the edge of depersonalization, a strange, drifting state where you feel like a stranger to yourself. Still conscious, still functioning, but oddly disconnected. It's like watching your life through a pane of glass. Like hearing your own voice echo from far away. Like your body has become a costume you're borrowing for a while. And the most unsettling part? You still know it's you. That's what separates depersonalization from delusion. It's not about losing reality. It's about feeling separate from it. It can last for seconds or hours, or for some, much longer. Many people experience it briefly, during grief, trauma, stress, or even extreme fatigue. You wake up one morning and look in the mirror and feel like the reflection is someone else. Not unfamiliar, just off. A few heartbeats later, the sensation fades. But for a moment, the line between being and observing blurred. It's not rare. Some studies estimate that up to 50% of people experience depersonalization at least once in their lives. In its more persistent form, it becomes depersonalization derealization disorder, where the feelings don't fade. People report moving through their day like actors, detached from emotions, watching themselves smile, feeling words come out of their mouths without weight, knowing what they're doing, but not feeling it. It's often not distressing in a dramatic way. It's just numb. And still, the world continues. Bills are paid, conversations happen, the performance of life goes on, but something inside whispers, is this real? Am I real? So what causes this? It seems to be the brain's way of protecting itself. When things become too overwhelming, emotionally or physically, the mind steps back. Like a turtle pulling into its shell, it disconnects feeling from experience, not to punish you, but to preserve you. Some researchers compare it to a circuit breaker, a surge of stress, and something flips. But once the system settles, the switch can be flipped back. There's also evidence that depersonalization may involve changes in brain regions like the prefrontal cortex, which becomes overactive, while areas responsible for emotional integration, like the limbic system, quiet down. In other words, you become more observing, less feeling, more calculation, less connection. And yet, through all of it, your self-awareness remains. It's like being lost, but carrying a map with your name on it. There's a poem in that. Now think of derealization, the cousin of depersonalization. It's when the world itself feels unreal, distant, artificial. You walk through a familiar street, and it feels like a movie set. The colors are flat, the sounds feel staged, like everything is slightly wrong, but you can't name how. It's not psychosis. You know the world hasn't changed, but your experience of it has. Some people describe it as living behind glass. Others say it feels like floating in a dream they can't wake from. Often, depersonalization and derealization come together. The self and the world both blurred, both fragile. But what's beautiful and strange is this. You're still aware, still present, still thinking clearly. This is not madness. It's a malfunction of integration, not logic. You remember who you are. You know where you are. You just don't feel inside it. And maybe, for tonight, that's okay. There's something gentle about stepping away from yourself for a while, something peaceful, as long as you know you'll return. Let's stay here for a moment. In this space where you can observe without judgment, where your thoughts are clouds, your body a distant shore. You feel your breath, but it's not quite yours. You hear the hum of the world, but it's muffled. And still, something anchors you. A memory, a rhythm, a tiny thread pulling you gently back. That thread is important, because the self in all its layers isn't just one thing. You are thoughts, you are senses, you are memories, habits, reactions, secrets. And sometimes those layers drift apart, but they always remember how to return. You might lose touch with your emotions, but your body remembers safety. You might forget how it feels to be real, but the world still holds you, still responds. Tonight, if that feeling of floating finds you, don't resist it. Watch yourself from a distance, notice the stillness, and when the time comes, step softly back in, like returning to a room after stepping out for air. The light's the same, the chair's still warm, the you left behind is still waiting, whole, silent, yours. You glance at the clock. Then again, has it really only been a minute? Or was it longer? Time moves strangely when the world is quiet. Sometimes it stretches, slow, syrupy, infinite. Sometimes it vanishes, whole hours slipping through your fingers without a trace. Tonight, as you rest deeper, let's explore this odd, elastic sense of time. Not the ticking kind, but the felt kind, the one your mind shapes without you noticing. Time perception is one of the brain's most fragile constructions. It's not absolute, it's not always linear, and it's certainly not fair. Your internal sense of time is shaped by emotion, attention, novelty, and rhythm. It's subjective, a feeling more than a fact. You felt this. When you're anxious, time crawls. A minute becomes 10. You check your phone, your watch, your thoughts. You're waiting, and time resists. But when you're deep in focus, painting, talking, walking at dusk, you look up and an hour has passed. Gone, like a dream. That's called time compression. It's not a trick, it's a feature. Your brain doesn't measure time like a clock. It estimates it by counting events. The more sensory changes or mental shifts, the more time you feel has passed. So when everything is new, like the first day in a foreign city, time feels full, because your brain is busy marking experience. But when days blur, same routine, same hallway, same screen, your brain stops registering difference and time flattens. This is why childhood summers felt endless. Every day brought new textures, people, discoveries. But as you age, novelty fades. You've seen this sky, heard this story, walked this street. The brain saves energy by compressing repetition. And the result? Time speeds up. It's a quiet tragedy and a gentle reminder to seek moments that interrupt the loop. to walk a new path, to notice the color of a stranger's coat, to pause long enough for a memory to form. Because time isn't made of minutes, it's made of moments. But there's a stranger layer still. Some people experience chronostasis, the illusion that time has paused. You may have felt it when you glance at a clock, and for a heartbeat, the second hand freezes, then jolts back into motion. It's not your eyes, it's your brain adjusting the timeline. When you move your eyes quickly, called a saccade, your visual system briefly shuts down to avoid blur. But your brain doesn't like gaps, so it fills in that blind moment by stretching what you saw just after. So the second hand seems still, frozen in that post-saccade glow. For just a second, time holds its breath. Then it exhales and continues. Another strange twist, some people lose the ability to sense time at all. In cases of neurological trauma, especially to the basal ganglia or right parietal cortex, patients may lose their sense of duration. They can't tell if 5 minutes or 5 hours have passed. The world becomes timeless, not in the poetic way, but in the literal, disorienting sense. It's as if their internal metronome has fallen silent. Others experience the opposite, time dilation under stress. Soldiers report moments in combat where seconds feel like minutes. Adrenaline floods the system. Sensory input spikes. The brain takes in so much information that it feels like time has slowed. It's a survival adaptation. In danger, your mind becomes high resolution. Time bends to give you space. But in peaceful states like right now, time softens. Minutes become gentle stretches of breath and quiet thought. You stop tracking. You start floating. Even your dreams play with time. You fall asleep for 10 minutes and dream a whole day. Or you sleep for hours and wake with no memory at all. Dream time is flexible. Narrative can loop, stretch, collapse, and the brain accepts it. Because inside it knows, time is not absolute. Not here. Not now. Philosophers have long debated the nature of time. Is it a thing that flows, or a structure we impose? Einstein once wrote, "The distinction between past, present, and future is only a stubbornly persistent illusion." And in moments like this, lying still, untethered, you begin to believe him. There is no yesterday here. No deadline, no rush, just breath, just presence, just the gentle unfolding of now. And when the morning comes, this hour will feel like both a blink and a lifetime. A moment you swam through without fully noticing. So let go of the clock. Let go of measuring. Time will do what it does. Warp, fold, stretch, vanish. But you're already where you need to be, and there's nowhere else to go. You lie still, listening. To the hum in the walls, to the rise and fall of your breath. Everything feels where it should be. Arms, legs, fingers, toes. But deep down, there's a strange question whispering at the edges. What if one part wasn't really yours? It sounds impossible, but for some people this thought isn't fleeting. It's persistent, heavy, and real. This is the haunting reality of body integrity identity disorder, or BIID, a rare and unsettling condition where someone feels, with quiet certainty, that one of their limbs doesn't belong to them. Not that it's paralyzed, not that it's numb, but that it's foreign. As if the brain has drawn the boundary of the self, and that limb is outside of it. People with BID often know, logically, that their leg or arm is part of their body. They can move it, feel it, use it. But something in them insists, this shouldn't be here. The feeling is not dramatic. It's not a scream, but a hum, an ache of misalignment, like wearing someone else's coat, forever. Some describe the sensation as a lifelong discomfort, a wrongness that began in childhood. Others only notice it later in life, as their brain begins to drift from its map of the body. And here's the strange part. Scans of people with BID often show that the parietal lobe, the region responsible for creating a sense of body ownership, is behaving differently. It's as if the brain's internal blueprint, the quiet outline of you, simply omits the limb. And so, every time you look down and see it, your mind whispers, that doesn't belong here. It's not delusion, it's not attention-seeking, it's a mismatch between brain and body, between map and territory, and the emotional burden of it can be profound. Some people with BID go to extraordinary lengths to remove the unwanted limb, not out of madness, but out of desperation for harmony. They don't hate the limb, they just can't accept it, because to them, it was never really part of who they are. It's not the only example of this strange body-mind glitch. There's also phantom limb syndrome, where a person who's lost a limb continues to feel it, not just vaguely, but with pain, itch, pressure, even gestures. You may reach to scratch an ankle, only to realize that ankle is no longer there. Again, the brain holds a map, and sometimes the map lingers longer than the land. In contrast to BIID, the phantom limb is a reminder of something lost, a presence that refuses to vanish, even when the body has moved on. Both conditions show us the same strange truth. Your sense of your body is not purely physical. It's built inside your brain, projected, reinforced, imagined. And like any system that's imagined, it can glitch. You felt smaller versions of this, waking up to find your arm completely numb. You touch it with your other hand, and it feels not quite yours. Floppy, lifeless, alien. Or when you spin too fast and lose your sense of up and down. Or when you wake from a dream where you had wings or gills or 5 fingers on one hand, and for a second, reality wobbles. These are small reminders that your body, too, is a construct, maintained, monitored, mapped, and sometimes misfiled. There's a name for that jolt of unfamiliarity with your own body. Somatoparaphrenia. In this condition, a person may deny ownership of a limb altogether. They'll insist it belongs to someone else, that it's been sewn on, that it's a stranger's. This typically follows brain damage, strokes, trauma, and is usually temporary. But it highlights how delicate self-recognition really is. Most days, you trust the mirror. You accept the shape beneath the blanket as your own. But this trust is learned, and like all learned things, it can erode. Still, there's wonder in this too, because it means your sense of self is adaptable, elastic, able to absorb change after injury, after surgery, after age. Your body shifts, and your brain slowly, gently redraws the map. Think of people who adapt to prosthetics. They begin to sense them not as tools, but as extensions of self. They reach, move, dance, and the mind responds, yes, this is mine. That's the miracle hiding inside the glitch. Your identity isn't fixed, it's responsive. Even now, as you lie in stillness, your brain is tracking limbs, monitoring skin, listening to heartbeat, creating the silent sense of me in space. You don't have to think about it, but it's happening, always. Tonight, let your body feel whole, even if it sometimes forgets how. Let your mind rest from drawing borders. Let your skin feel soft and real and enough. You are here, and whatever shape you wake up in tomorrow will still be yours, because you was never just arms and legs. It was always breath and memory, dream and presence, something deeper than anatomy, something that knows how to return. You're alone. The room is still. And yet, a voice speaks, not out loud, not from the shadows, but inside. Maybe it's a memory, a phrase you've heard before, or a line you'd never say, but just did in thought. You didn't invite it, it just arrived. This is where we drift tonight, into the soft, uncharted space of the inner voice, the one that narrates, comments, repeats, and sometimes contradicts. Most people have some form of internal monologue. It's how you organize your day, rehearse a conversation, replay a regret. You think in words, often silently spoken to yourself. But not everyone does. Some people think more in images, in shapes, in soundless abstractions. And for those who do have a voice, sometimes it doesn't feel entirely under control. You walk into a room and hear your mind say, I hate it here, even though you don't. Not really. You imagine yelling during a funeral, jumping off a platform, saying something cruel to someone you love. You don't want to. You never would. But the thought arrives, uninvited, vivid, and sharp. These are called intrusive thoughts, and nearly everyone has them. They're not signs of danger, not proof of inner darkness. They're just static, random firings, little jolts in the stream of thought. But because the voice feels like you might take it seriously. You wonder, why did I think that? Am I that kind of person? But you're not. And the thought isn't you, it's just noise. Think of your mind as a room with an open window. Most thoughts are your own, but sometimes something drifts in from the breeze. A phrase, a memory, a melody. And before you know it, you're humming a song you haven't heard in a decade. Or remembering the smell of a hallway you've never consciously visited. That's how deep the archive goes. Some theories suggest your inner voice is a product of childhood, an internalization of people you once listened to. Parents, teachers, caregivers. You heard them often, and over time, your mind began to echo their tone. This is why, when you're hard on yourself, you might hear a voice that isn't really yours, but still feels familiar. Psychologists call it self-talk, but it's more than just pep talks and doubts. It's your mind narrating reality. And when you're stressed, the narration changes. Voices can grow more critical or loop on certain phrases or shift into second person. You're messing this up? You always do this. You might find yourself arguing with it or trying to silence it, but maybe you don't have to. What if you just noticed it? Gently, like birdsong, something passing through. Because the truth is, your mind generates thoughts, the way your heart pumps blood, constantly, automatically. You can't stop the stream, but you can learn to watch it. Mindfulness teaches this, to sit behind the waterfall of thought, to observe, not judge. You begin to see the voice not as a master, but as a messenger, one among many. Some thoughts are helpful, some aren't, some feel loving, others strange. Occasionally, a thought arrives that's so unexpected, so not you, that it catches your breath. You wonder where it came from. But here's a quiet theory. The brain is constantly simulating possibilities, testing options, imagining responses. It tries out voices, rehearses decisions, runs silent simulations of what could happen. Tasks so you're ready if it does. That eerie voice? It may just be a stress test, a trial balloon, one you never had to act on. Of course, sometimes these voices grow louder, persistent, commanding. In certain psychiatric conditions, like auditory hallucinations and schizophrenia, the voice becomes externalized. It speaks as if from outside, with identity, with tone, and the person may feel they have no control over it. But even in these cases, studies show that the brain's language centers are active, as if the person is, in some strange way, hearing themselves from the outside. The self fractures, but doesn't disappear. Back in quieter minds, the voice usually remains soft, private, familiar. It speaks to you as you walk alone, as you reread a message, as you drift to sleep. It may not always be kind, but it's consistent, and if you listen long enough, you may begin to shift it, to soften it, to question it. You may catch it saying, "You're not enough," and gently reply, "That's not true." Over time, the voice learns, because the voice is you, and also not you. It's a reflection, a remix, a trail of thought that loops back into itself. And tonight, it will whisper softly as you fade, guiding your dreams, echoing memories, wrapping your thoughts in gentle phrases. Let it speak, let it wander, let it say strange things you'll never remember by morning. Because in the silence beneath it, you are still here, whole, quiet, listening. You're lying still now. Your breath has slowed. The weight of your limbs melts into the mattress. This is the borderland. Not quite awake, not quite dreaming. And here, some of the strangest human glitches begin to stir. You've probably felt it before, that terrifying moment when your mind wakes up, but your body doesn't. You try to move, nothing happens. You try to call out, no sound. Your chest is heavy, your limbs feel pinned, and worse, you sense something near. In the corner, at the foot of the bed, watching. This is sleep paralysis, one of the oldest and eeriest documented sleep phenomena. It's been feared for centuries, given names like the night hag, the demon on the chest, the witch riding your back. But it's not supernatural, it's neurological. When you sleep, your brain enters a stage called REM, rapid eye movement, where dreams are vivid. To protect you from acting them out, your body becomes paralyzed, a safety measure. But sometimes, you wake up during this state. Your mind is alert, your body is still offline. And in that in-between, your brain panics. It fills the gap with imagery, fear, shadows, footsteps that may not be there. The glitch is brief, rarely more than a minute, but it can feel like a lifetime. And yet, it teaches us something profound, that the self can split, that consciousness and control can come out of sync. Another strange sleep glitch is hypnic jerks. Those sudden full-body twitches right as you're falling asleep. They startle you, yank you from the edge of dreams. Scientists still don't fully understand them. One theory? As your muscles relax, your brain misinterprets the signal, thinking you're falling, and jolts the body awake to catch you. A primitive reflex, a false alarm, a bedtime glitch from an older version of the human OS. But not all sleep anomalies are violent. Some are quiet, slippery, like false awakenings, where you dream that you've woken up, but you haven't. You get out of bed, brush your teeth, make coffee, and then you wake up again, and sometimes again. It can loop for what feels like hours. Your brain builds an entire waking world inside the dream. The curtains, the clock, the flicker of the bathroom light. Perfectly wrong. It shows how deeply your mind craves structure, routine, something to hold on to, and how easily it can mimic the waking world when left alone. Dream researchers have documented this for centuries, from Tibetan monks using lucid dreams for meditation to modern sleep labs mapping brainwaves like constellations. They've found that even in dreams, we bring our fears, our rituals, our glitches. You forget your lines during a performance, show up to school without clothes, lose teeth, not because your brain is mocking you, but because it's sorting emotions, playing scenes on fast forward, trying to resolve what waking hours left unfinished. And sometimes, just sometimes, you dream of a version of yourself that isn't quite you, a different voice, a different gender, a different life. And yet, it feels normal, because the self in dreams is fluid, not bound to bones or biography. In the logic of dreams, you are what the moment needs you to be. A swimmer, a lost child, a fox in the woods. And when you wake, part of that version lingers, softly. It reminds you that the self is not a fixed point, it's a process, a dance between memory, sensation, and thought. And it can bend, split, float. Even now, as your thoughts slow, you're approaching that gentle bend again. Not quite asleep, but no longer fully present. Your breath deepens, your thoughts blur at the edges. Your inner voice grows soft, then silent. The world fades to muted tones. No bright lights, no harsh sounds, only the rhythmic pull of your own mind, guiding you into the dark. And before we end, a few more moments. A soft wind down, a gentle step back from the edge. The bed holds your shape like a memory. The air is still. Your thoughts are soft and unhurried. Whatever glitches live inside you, strange thoughts, forgotten names, dreams that echo louder than they should, they're not flaws, they're signals. Proof that your mind is alive, adapting, trying. You are not broken. You're intricate. You are not lost. You're unfolding. Let your body drift. Let your mind dissolve into the quiet swirl of dreams. No need to solve anything now. No need to hold on. That's all for tonight. Let your mind keep floating or drift into sleep. I'll be here again next time.